of what you've learned so far here, kind of a midway point for you. A little bit of the math behind it, and I thought, why not have a hypothetical disease outbreak, and then drop an infected individual in a certain city, for example. And then from comparing it to historical response times, I'd figure out, estimate at least, how long it would take for this disease to spread and how many people would be infected as a result. So it was kind of hard for me to figure out a disease, right? Because not a lot of people might find the specifics of influenza very interesting. So I was thinking, okay, what is a disease that people find interesting, that people enjoy, spend a lot of time paying attention to? It's like, oh, perfect. Zombies. So my hypothetical disease was a zombie outbreak. I created zombie virus, 2 different versions for it, and I just dropped them in the middle of New York City and see what would happen, right? The fictional one is obviously fictional, never could happen. Undead, you have to remove the head to kill it, conversion rate, that never happens in real life. So I had to tone it down a little and make it more realistic. So I based the symptoms off rabies, increased aggression, occasional paralysis, loss of higher brain functions, and I took the incubation period. Basically, the incubation period is the time from initial infection to showing symptoms. I believe influenza, which was one of the faster ones out there, 1 to 3 days, are not. And I estimated this off of, okay, how many people could a sick, paralyzed, slowly walking zombie infect, come to contact? And I came to the conclusion of 3. People try helping them initially, they don't know what they're getting into, get bitten, so on and so forth. And so each wave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is the end of an incubation period, when they start showing symptoms. So wave 1, it's 3, and it's an exponential curve. So at the end of wave 5, you have 243 people infected. Which isn't exactly a world-ending scenario, right? Which is exactly what I came up to. It was a very minimal threat to our existence. People react fast enough to realize, oh, hey, this isn't just some random crazy person biting someone. It's a disease that needs to be appropriately counteracted. And so, CDC, your average response time for Ebola, something so significant, there was a ground team in West Africa in about a week. And so here in the US it'd be a little shorter, and considering people are going crazy and biting each other, they react a little faster. So 4 days. Within 4 days, there's a team on the ground, quarantine measures are put in place, 243 people infected. Not exactly a world-ending scenario. It'd just be in the news cycle for maybe 1 or 2 circulations, and people forget about it. But then you have the fast ones, the ones that are absolutely terrifying, running around, biting you. And I based the 19 off of data I gathered from Chinese knife attacks. Because for some reason, China has a very big problem with people liking to stab each other. And so, instead of school shootings, you have knife attacks. And I imagine, okay, this person's running around trying to cut as many people as they can. Close enough, right? So 19. And so that's a lot more scary. Your most deadly disease is most infectious disease has around an R0 of 9. Okay, that's a real world recommendation. 19 is extremely fast. So assuming 19 holds true for at least a significant amount of time, you have, at the end of 5 waves, 3 days, so around 2 weeks, 2.4 million people infected. Okay, that's a lot bigger problem. So this is a map I created through this really awesome seminar called Zombie Town USA. A grad student, I think in Colorado, made this, simulating like a zombie infection. If you drop them, you can set the traits of the zombies, and from there, you have them. You just spread like a traditional through a mathematical process. And the one on the left is within a week, and then the one on the right is within a month, 720 hours. So within a month, you pretty much lost all of the eastern side of the United States, but it's not the end of the world, right? It slows down. And it slows down as population density decreases. So there's kind of getting my brain working, practice. Dr. Green, you can tell me later if all of it was just complete crap. That's okay. So let's move on to my interviews, right? What I've talked about previously was just the work I did on my own, the research I did on my own. But the biggest source of knowledge were professionals in the field of public health related to epidemiology. So two significant ones I had were Dr. Robert Haley. He was more in academia, which was what I was trying to get away from, but his bio online just showed me he'd done a lot of significant work in the past, so I just wanted to talk to him. And he did many great things. So he worked for a time in the CDC, the Epidemiological Intelligence Service, going out to different hospitals across the United States, helping people with any disease outbreaks they might need. And then he helped set the standards in hospitals, which are standards every hospital pretty much has to have to prevent nosocomial infections, which are hospital-based infections, basically accidents, right? And then he also brought awareness to Gulf War illness, basically a unique illness Gulf War veterans have because of exposure to, he figured out it was an exposure to an explosion at a chemical plant that a number of soldiers were exposed to, but they weren't getting paid from like the VA for their damages. So he was academia. His story was incredible to me, but again, academia. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to write papers for the rest of my life, so I moved on. And then went to Dr. Wendy Chung. And she also had very many stories to tell, but more in my line of thought, more what I wanted to do. Because she is the chief epidemiologist at Dallas County Public Health Department, and she was on the front lines of the Ebola crisis in 2014. Remember when I said that the world was looking on Dallas at that time? They were also looking at her. So she managed to handle that crisis very well. And she told me all about that. But the most important thing probably was when she let me sit in on a meeting she had with some hospital students doing their residency, and as they walked through the public health department, so did I. So she showed me pretty much every corner of her department. She showed me the STD clinic. The STD clinic, there was a tuberculosis department. They had a giant freezer full of preserved viruses, I believe.